There is a 14-page CIA document that sat classified for 42 years. On page 9, an analyst used one specific word to describe what a government did to an entire nation's history. That word was falsified. And the nation they erased? You've never heard of it. Here's why. There is a document sitting in the CIA's public reading room right now, 14 pages, dense, precise, written in 1957. It carried a classification stamp for 42 years. Nobody outside the intelligence community could read it until August 24, 1999. The document number is CIA RDP 78. I've linked it in the description. Don't click it yet. Watch this first, then go read it yourself. Because on page 9, a CIA analyst described something that should disturb anyone who takes history seriously. He describes a government ordering the complete rewriting of an entire nation's past. He doesn't call it revision. He doesn't call it reinterpretation. He uses one very deliberate word. He calls it falsified. The nation whose history was falsified is Tartaria. Now, before anything else, I want to be direct with you about what this video is and what it isn't. I am not going to screenshot one paragraph, post it out of context, and declare some grand revelation. That is what gets people in this space rightly dismissed. I'm going to walk through this entire document in full context because the context makes it far more disturbing than any screenshot suggests. Every single claim in this video is verifiable before it ends. The CIA document is in their public reading room. The encyclopedia I'll reference is scanned and sitting on the Internet Archive. The historical records are in academic journals and Russian state archives. I am not asking you to trust me. I am asking you to check. The document is titled National Cultural Development Under Communism. It opens with a quote, a Bolshevik proclamation dated December 7, 1917, signed by Lenin and Stalin, addressed to, and I'm reading directly, all Muslim peoples of Russia and the East, Tartars of the Volga and Crimea, Kyrgyz and Sarts of Siberia and Turkestan, Turks and Tartars of Transcaucasia, Chechens and mountain peoples of the Caucasus. The promise made to all of them was explicit. Your beliefs and customs, your national and cultural institutions are forever free and inviolate. Organize your national life in complete freedom. This is your right. That was the promise. The remaining 13 pages of this CIA document are a meticulous, methodical accounting of how every syllable of that promise was broken. Mosques destroyed, languages corrupted or outright suppressed, Muslim literary works banned unless they contained praise for Russia and Russians. Folk epics that had survived for centuries were reclassified as criminal content. The Kazakh epic Kublumbi Batyr, once celebrated as a monument of national literature, was officially redefined by Soviet authorities as, and I'm quoting, low matter extolling violence and brigandage. An entire culture's literary heritage made illegal unless it served Russian imperial interests. Then we reach page 9. August 9, 1944, while the world's attention was fixed on the Allied advance through France, the Central Committee of the Communist Party in Moscow issued a very different kind of order, not a military directive, a historical one. It was sent to the Tartar Provincial Committee. The instruction was to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria, to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character committed by individual writers and historians. The CIA analyst writes what follows without hesitation, without diplomatic softening. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, it was to be falsified in order to eliminate references to great Russian aggressions and to hide the facts of the real course of Tartar-Russian relations. Now, here is the paragraph that other people always cut off. The analyst continues, and this was no isolated case. In every Muslim area within the USSR, historians rewrote history on direct orders from the Communist Party. The goal was to distort the facts so that Russians would appear always in a favorable light. And then one final line that lands like a door closing. Histories which present the facts truthfully have been withdrawn and destroyed. Not archived, not relocated, destroyed. I want to be precise about what I am claiming and what I am not. Fact checkers have correctly noted that this document does not prove the existence of Tartaria as described in Internet conspiracy theories. They are right, it does not. But here is what it does prove. In the CIA's own language, a government ordered the history of a specific territory rewritten. A CIA analyst documented that order and called it falsification. Truthful histories were physically destroyed, and the CIA's own report about all of this was classified for 42 years. The question is not whether this document proves everything people claim online. The question is, what was so dangerous about the history of Tartaria that it required falsification in the first place? So what was Tartaria? Forget Internet theories entirely. Go to the source that existed 2 centuries before the Internet existed, the Encyclopedia Britannica. Not a modern edition, the first edition ever published. Edinburgh, 1771. 3 volumes representing the pinnacle of Western encyclopedic knowledge at that moment. Volume 3, page 887. The entry reads, Tartary, a vast country in the northern parts of Asia, bounded by Siberia on the north and west. This is called Great Tartaria. The Britannica then lists subdivisions: the Tartars of Astrakhan, Circassia, and Dagestan, the Kalmuk Tartars between Siberia and the Caspian Sea, the Uzbek Tartars and Moguls north of Persia and India, those of Tibet northwest of China. And crucially, the Britannica identifies distinct political entities within this territory: Muscovite Tartary with its capital at Tobolsk, Chinese Tartary bordering China, Independent Tartary with its capital at Samarkand. These are not vague labels for wilderness. These are territories with named capitals and described governments. And Muscovite Tartary, according to the first encyclopedia ever published in the English language, was described as the largest country in the world. Today, if you search Tartaria in any search engine, the top result will tell you it never existed, that it was merely a cartographic convenience, a catch-all label that European mapmakers used for lands they did not understand. But you do not issue a directive from the Central Committee of the Communist Party to rewrite the history of a cartographic convenience. You do not classify the CIA's report about that rewriting for 42 years if the territory was empty steppe and nothing more. Something about this history was worth the sustained effort of falsification across 2 full centuries. And to understand what, you need to look at what happened just 2 years after the Britannica published that entry. September 1773. A Don Cossack named Yemilian Pugachev raises an army along the Yaik River. He was born around 1742 in a village called Zimovayask. He fought in the 7 Years' War and the Russo-Turkish War before deserting the Imperial Army. He was arrested, he escaped, arrested again, escaped again. He wandered for years among the Cossacks and Old Believers of the southern frontier, absorbing their grievances, learning their hunger for something different. And then he made a claim that would nearly bring down the Russian Empire. He declared himself to be the true Tsar Peter III, Catherine the Great's murdered husband, risen and returned. What followed was not a peasant riot. Pugachev assembled a force that grew to over 100,000. Yaik Cossacks, Tartars, Bashkirs, peasants, factory workers, Old Believers, anyone carrying a reason to resist Catherine's rule. He did not simply gather a mob, he established a war college modeled directly on Catherine's own military structure. He built intelligence networks of messengers and spies across vast distances. He recruited local priests and mullahs to write and distribute royal decrees in both Russian and Tartar. He captured the city of Kazan and burned it to the ground. He besieged the administrative capital of Orenburg for 6 months. At his peak, he threatened Moscow itself. Catherine was forced to pull active combat troops from her ongoing war against the Ottoman Empire just to fight him on Russian soil. His territory stretched from the Volga to the Urals. Look at a map from 1771. That is the exact territory labeled Tartary. Catherine initially treated him as a petty criminal. She placed a bounty of 500 rubles on his head. Within a year, that bounty had exceeded 28,000 rubles. By the summer of 1774, the largest peasant revolt in Russian history was burning across the largest territory described by the world's leading encyclopedia. In August 1774, Pugachev's forces were finally crushed near Tsaritsyn. 10,000 rebels killed or captured. In September, his own Cossacks betrayed him and delivered him in chains. He was transported to Moscow in an iron cage, interrogated for a month, and sentenced. On January 10, 1775, Yemelyan Pugachev was beheaded and quartered in Bolotnaya Square before a crowd. His body parts were displayed across the city, then burned. But Catherine did not stop there. And this is where the story stops being about a rebellion and becomes something else entirely. Catherine did not just kill Pugachev, she tried to erase him and everything he represented from the surface of the earth. His house was burned to the ground. His village, Zimovyetskaya, was renamed Potyomkinskaya. The river where the rebellion began, the Yaik River, was renamed the Ural River. You have heard of the Ural River, you have never heard its original name, because Catherine removed it from every map, every document, every official conversation. The Yaik Cossacks became the Ural Cossacks. The city of Yaitsky Gorodok became Uralsk. Even Pugachev's surviving family was forced to abandon their surname. They became the Simonovs. And the decree that authorized all of this, dated January 13, 1775, stated its purpose in language so direct it reads more like a confession than a legal document. The stated reason for renaming a river, a city, a village, and an entire people was, and I'm quoting the actual decree, complete oblivion. Not justice, not public safety, not deterrence, complete oblivion. She named her intention out loud. You rename a river to achieve oblivion. You burn a house to prevent memory. You force a family to abandon their name so that even bloodlines forget. That is not how empires respond to criminals. That is how empires erase countries. Now place Catherine's 1775 decree next to the 1944 Soviet directive, next to the 1957 CIA report. Because the pattern does not stop with Catherine. It repeats for 200 years against the same territory, using the same methods. In 1837, a Kazakh sultan named Kenes Kasimov launched a 10-year uprising against Russian expansion into the steppe. He was descended from the line of Genghis Khan. He was the last Khan of the Kazakhs. He fought for a decade across the exact same territory before his death in 1847. His people never forgot him. In 1943, the history of the Kazakh SSR was published, and it celebrated Kenes among other national heroes. 2 years later, a Bolshevik journal attacked the book for glorifying Kazakh military traditions and resistance to Russian rule. In 1947, a historian named Ermukan Bekmakanov, the first Kazakh to earn a doctoral degree in history, published his work praising Kenes. He received severe warnings from the Communist Party's Central Committee. By December 1950, Pravda itself published an article reclassifying Kenes's 10-year liberation struggle as a reactionary feudal movement. Bekmakanov was forced to rewrite his own doctoral work. He changed his own conclusion from national hero to reactionary because the party demanded it. A historian rewrote his own research to say the opposite of what his evidence showed. And it was not only Kenes. Imam Shamil, the legendary leader of 25 years of Caucasian resistance against Russia, received identical treatment. The Great Soviet Encyclopedia reversed its own earlier praise of his movement. What one edition called a struggle for national liberation, the next edition relabeled as, and I am quoting the actual encyclopedia, a fight for freedom for wolves, for backwardness, for oppression, for darkness. Museums across the borderlands were purged, art objects confiscated, dozens of folk epics officially denounced as reactionary. All of it documented by that same CIA analyst in 1957, all of it sealed behind a classification stamp until 1999. Now, draw a single line through 2 centuries. 1771, the Britannica describes Tartaria with subdivisions and capitals, calling Muscovite Tartaria the largest country in the world. 1773, the largest revolt in Russian history erupts across that exact territory. 1775, Catherine renames the river, burns the village, and writes complete oblivion into law. 1837 to 1847, another decade of rebellion across the same lands. 1944, Moscow orders the history of Tartaria rewritten. 1957, the CIA documents the falsification and classifies its own report. 1999, that report is finally declassified. At every single point on this 200-year timeline, the same territory is the target, and at every point, someone in power is rewriting what happened there. Now consider one final layer, not as proof of anything, as open questions that I think deserve serious examination. Across the territories that historical maps labeled Tartaria, structures exist whose official construction narratives strain credibility on close inspection. Star forts, geometrically precise fortifications with identical angular symmetry, have been catalogued in more than 105 countries, more than 1,700 documented worldwide. Fort Bortange in the Netherlands, Goryoku in Japan, Fort McHenry in Baltimore. Structures on different continents sharing geometric principles so precise and consistent they appear engineered by a single unified tradition. They appear with remarkable frequency in territories that overlap with historical Tartary maps. The World's Fair structures of 1893 in Chicago and 1915 in San Francisco were built to resemble ancient marble palaces, then demolished or burned within months of their closing. We are told they were temporary plaster structures created purely for exhibition display. The surviving photographs show columns, domes, and stonework that does not look temporary by any reasonable definition of that word. Ornate government buildings appeared across America throughout the 1800s. A nation barely a century old was producing civic architecture European capitals with 1,000 years of building tradition would struggle to match. Some of these buildings have no complete construction records. Many appeared within compressed timelines that raise their own questions. I am not telling you who built these structures. I am asking whether the official histories of these territories deserve the same scrutiny we now apply to the documents and the maps. When a CIA analyst tells you the history of these lands was falsified, it is not paranoia to ask what else about them might be incomplete. Every claim in this video is independently verifiable right now. The CIA document is in their public reading room. The 1771 Britannica is scanned and available on the Internet Archive. Pugachev's rebellion is covered in every major encyclopedia of Russian history. Catherine's renaming decrees are preserved in Russian state archives. The Bekmekhanov case is published in academic journals and in Foreign Affairs magazine. You do not need to trust me. These are not my documents. They belong to the institutions that carried out the orders, written by the people who did the erasing, preserved in the archives of the empires that issued the directives. A CIA analyst in 1957 chose the word falsified. An empress in 1775 wrote complete oblivion into law. An encyclopedia in 1771 described the largest country in the world, and today that country appears on no map anywhere on Earth. The river Catherine renamed still flows under the name she gave it. The territory the Britannica described still exists under other empires assigned it to it. The histories that were withdrawn and destroyed are still gone. And the most unsettling thing about all of this is not what was concealed, it's that they documented every single step of the concealment, classified the documentation, and counted on one certainty above all others: that you would never bother to look.